All right, we're going to open the meeting and see if there's any public comment for closed session. Seeing none, we will adjourn to closed session.
We're recording.
Right. Thank you. We're coming back from closed session. There is nothing to report out from closed session. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, welcome everybody to our board meeting. For those of you watching on Zoom, please know that you can view us as we did pre-COVID. But if you want to attend the board meeting or speak at the board meeting, you will need to come down to the district office to do that. And we are here to listen to you. So roll call, everyone is here this evening. Notice to the public, if you wish to speak during public comment, there will be an opportunity for you to do that. We have time limits of 3 minutes per topic per person at discretion of the board president. Recognition of guests and presentations.
None tonight.
All right, correspondence?
None.
Correct. Moving on to the consent agenda. Is there any board comment on the consent agenda? All right, seeing none, is there public comment on the consent agenda? All right, seeing none, I will entertain a motion on that item.
So moved.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, and since we are in person, we can just do all those in favor. Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, and any opposed? Motion passes. We are going to skip over items pulled from consent agenda because there were none, and we are on stakeholder communications. Anybody from the Citizens Oversight Committee? All right, seeing none. Kathy, you are up. Employee Association.
I mean, you wouldn't mind coming up near the table, at least whether or not you sit down. That's got about a 12-foot range, 10, 12-foot range.
They can hear me from here though, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Thank you.
The Dixon Teachers Association believes our students deserve the best. Teachers and certificated staff are juggling the academic, social, and emotional needs of our students with professionalism and kindness. DTA members use load-bearing, evidence-based practices such as building relationships, setting classroom routines and expectations, providing frequent and relevant feedback, and giving explicit instruction. These practices help students to regain their footing on individual campuses, to fill learning loss gaps, and to succeed in schools. Our members continue to perform at high levels even as they adjust to their own health needs. DTA leaders continue to discuss with the district several important aspects that will help our students benefit from the high-quality teachers they have. These include providing timely and relevant instructional material for students who are quarantined or otherwise absent via Google Classroom, communicating with families about expectations for academic, social, and emotional growth this school year, working with site administrators to ensure students' needs are met, and collaboratively developing professional opportunities that further enhance our teaching. We do these things for our students because the Dixon Teachers Association believes our students deserve the best. Invest in teachers, invest in small class sizes, invest in the best resources and support available for our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. All right, any other employee association reports this evening? All right, seeing none, are there any parent association reports? All right, seeing none, we are on public comment. If you wish to introduce a topic that is within the jurisdiction of the board, you may do so at this time. Just as a reminder, board members may only respond, clarify, or refer to staff for review and presentation at a future meeting. Is there anyone here for public comment? All right, go ahead.
Where's the recording?
Right there.
Right there.
Okay, so is it moving on its own? Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Yes. You're welcome to sit down with you if you prefer,
Okay,
whatever you prefer.
it's fine. I was just wondering where it was going to be at. Okay. All right, you guys. So I'm here to discuss the indoor and outdoor mask mandate currently being enforced through the Dixon Unified School District. I want to point out that this actually is about compliance to protect you and your jobs, not the actual safety of our children. After all, you guys, the only mask that has happened to be proven to prevent the spread of COVID-19 is an N95 mask. Instead, kids are instructed to wear face coverings of any kind. I want to address my own observation. Last week, after being at the front of Dixon High campus for close to 10 minutes, I witnessed staff repeatedly entering the theater maskless, students walking around the front of the campus, removing their masks almost immediately when they are out of sight from campus mask monitors, only to catch a small break from the mask and return back through the doors into the school. Furthermore, students are allowed to drink water and eat as they should with masks off. As I can only imagine, once they're doing so, they're going to be touching doors and each other and bags. So the constant touching of the face, removing the mask, it's happening. I saw it happen several times with students walking around. The point I'm making is that even with all of the makeshift policies and cross-contamination happening, cases are still dropping. We did receive this, that the second week of school, cases did drop. You guys sent that out to all of us. Why is that? Could it be that the kids being together in a shared space, now that their immune systems are starting to work? Yet we're still requiring masking indoors and out. I am aware that the CDPH will be reviewing the indoor mask policy that you claim you must adhere to in November. But what about your decision to mask our kids outdoors during physical education? As a parent, I ask that you reconsider your outdoor mask policy immediately. Our kids deserve time in their school day to run and play and breathe in fresh air. Education should be made fun, and kids are not resilient to the harm the masks are causing them. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki.
And I need to ask you to place the mask on your face or.
You know what? I was raped and gagged when I was younger, so I'm not putting a mask on my face. Okay, I know what it feels like to be gagged and raped and you can't breathe. So I'm sorry. I can be here. Sorry, guys.
So if you would like to comment to the board, you don't.
You talk to
If
me.
you don't,
You talk to me.
if you don't, then you may leave now and please submit something via email. That's how you can make a comment to the board.
I didn't make a comment. You talked to me and I told you no.
That's correct. I informed you, as the sign outside said, that,
I get that.
right, the masks are required to be.
Well, I'm sorry, maybe not everyone was raped and gagged when they were younger, and I'm not doing it. So there you go. But I, as a citizen of this planet, am allowed to be in this meeting. And I will be. And there you go.
As a member of our community, you are.
I'm not even near you, so don't worry about it. I won't get
That's
there.
irrelevant, ma'am. The fact is that we're able to set the policy for this room, and we've set the policy that masks are required.
If your policy discriminates against the civil rights of an individual, it's no policy at all, sir.
Hey, so here's the deal.
You know what civil rights are? I do. You want to challenge me?
I'm running this meeting,
I got rights.
and here's the deal.
Respect the rights. We have, does anybody here have a problem with her?
Okay, I'm gonna adjourn the meeting if you can't, keep your mouth shut.
Well, we're disrespecting her. She's harassed enough. She's bailing enough by these comments.
I'm not even
I'm
around
gonna
you.
adjourn the meeting if you can't keep quiet until it's your turn to be recognized. I will only call on people wearing masks to be able to speak in this meeting. So, if somebody else would like to speak a public comment, you may do so, or raise your hand now, I'll acknowledge you. If not, we're moving on. Richard.
Yes, I do want to speak. There's a big difference between mandates and laws. I'm going to speak because our children have been through enough. And I know we have a lot of union pressures and teacher pressures and pressures of people that are living in fear. Fear is something that right before us now on this very day is being shown to be very, very overrated. Okay, I want to be honest with you right now, the amount of military personnel that have died from the vaccine has surpassed the number of military personnel that have died from COVID. I'm not going to ask you to wake up to that fact. I'm going to ask you to wake up to what you're doing to our kids by trying to adhere to these policies that don't reflect the civil liberties of our citizenry and of our children, of the best health interests of our children. We just had an announcement here where I had to advocate for this lady because I will. That's who I am. I just had 7 CHP officers escort me out of the state capitol today because they're advocating for a lady they wanted to silence because all she was trying to do is speak the truth. This is coming to a stop. We need to be able to speak the truth. We need to address you to show you what's going on, what's happening to our kids. And what we just seen happen with Thomas. I want to make sure that's not happening here in this school board. You're keeping our parents out of the school rooms where they can't see what kinds of flags are actually flying. Okay, we don't know for sure what these teachers are teaching our children, whether it's propaganda or whether it's the actual subject matter. We don't know. It's just like the hospitals, you keep it dark, and the light can't come in and expose the darkness. How interested are you in finding out these teachers that are indoctrinating our children with things that are completely against the good of our nation? I hope you point people going and make sure they keep a good eye on these teachers, because they're way too protected by the unions, and you know it, because you have these closed doors with the unions, and I want them open.
You're following more important than even listening to what he has to say.
Thank you.
You're not even doing your job.
You hear what I said?
Those who would like to speak in public comment? Go ahead.
22nd, 2022, 2024. Done. All of you are done. We know that you're following the guidance, and that's the only reason none of you have a backup. You're done. You're finished. You can smoke and you can laugh, but you're done. It's not funny anymore. It's not funny to see my child come home after wearing a mask in 100 degrees. It's not funny and it's not smirkable. Done. Every single one of you. Promoting fear. The numbers are not there. They're not there. You're following guidance. Like zero leadership. That's it. Nothing else to say from
You don't care
the
for children but a paycheck. You care about that paycheck. You
You
don't
care.
care about
Thank
children
you.
at all.
Anybody else like to speak before I move on? All right, thank you. We are moving on to our next item, which is superintendent's update on the 2021-22 school year.
Those and pass them down, those are very, very current, but I'm going to show here in a moment. So, good evening, board members. I want to make sure that,
Oh.
you can just take a packet and pass it on down, please. I want to make sure tonight to give you primarily some information on our enrollment and staffing levels and class sizes out there and capture that part of our school year opening more than anything else really. We'll provide a little bit of information on case numbers, the numbers as of this week, and then we'll be able to talk about any of the testing or protocols as well with Mark available to assist with that. So as I reported, gosh, when did I report that? I reported that a couple weeks ago. Our enrollment numbers have improved significantly from what we anticipated. And I'm sorry, I should be in Zoom already, and I'm not, so give me just one moment. Our numbers have improved significantly from prior years, and certainly very significantly from our our projections that we made for this budget year. As the board is aware, we had a very conservative approach in our budget projections, anticipating that our long-term trend of declining enrollment would occur once again this year. So the good news is that trend for this year has taken a time out at least. We certainly don't know what will happen in the coming years, except for the fact that we do know that there's a great deal of housing that is being constructed in our community right now that many, many more units to come. Certainly, probably at this point, still over 1,000 housing units that will come. So that's the good news. While my computer is trying to get connected to the network here, and I apologize for that, let me just run through quickly the overall enrollment numbers that we have in the district at this point in time. So I've given you a page. Again, as soon as this connects, I will get this up for the public. I've given you this handout first off, and what it does is it runs through each of the school sites with the specific programs that they have, as well as the overall enrollment numbers. So you can see that the first number that we have here is, the first school that we have here, excuse me, is Anderson Elementary, which has a regular population of 453 students. There's one student who's currently on home and hospital, which means that they are out on a medical note at this point in time. And so a teacher goes home to that student for 5 hours a week. And then you see 16 students in the independent study program. So Anderson right now is at a total of 470 students. Tremont is the next school, and Tremont is the site that has our intensive learning center program. So their numbers are typically a little bit different than others. You have this year 29 students who are not in the overall enrollment count that you see up at the top here. So we are at Tremont with 361 students in the regular program. There's one student on the short-term independent study program. You have just 6 students at Tremont as of today who are in the long-term independent study program. And then you see that there are, as I mentioned, 29 students who are in the intensive learning center program. So that is the special education program that is housed only at that site. So those students are not counted in the general population. They are always accounted for separately. So moving on to Gretchen Higgins. You can see 360 students in the base program and 12 at GH in the long-term independent study program. The 10 students who are listed there as non-APA students, these are students who are in the Gretchen Higgins campus every day, but they are students who are enrolled in the county special education program. So we identify them as being here, but they are actually county students. At John Knight Middle School, you have 580 students in the regular program, 29 in the long-term independent study program, and just 2 who are enrolled in this in the intensive learning center program again. So we've got that that population totaling 611 at John Knight Middle School. Dixon High School, 1,018 on campus in the regular program. There's one short-term independent study. You can see that there are 35 students in the long-term independent study programs. Those students are not on campus every day. And as is the case at Gretchen Higgins, you do have 6 students who are in the SCO program who do not count technically as our students. So it's a total of 1,061 who are present at Dixon High School. At Main Prairie, you can see there's 71 students total in the regular program. And Main Prairie has 10 students who are currently in the independent study program there. Unlike the other sites in the district, Main Prairie is continuing with an existing independent study model that they had prior to the SB 130 requiring the establishment of the independent study programs for all districts in California. So they did not change their model in the slightest. So we've got them. There we go.
All right. Turn off. Oh, I got my mute on.
Do you need your camera or need the microphone or just your speakers?
Both. Let me try it again. There we go. All right, sorry about that. And Mark, I need sharing privileges, please. If I can get sharing privileges. On the last page is non-public school. And you can see that currently we have 9 students who are placed in non-public schools. So these are special education students who we were not able to meet the needs as identified in their IEPs. And so we see them move out of the district to non-public school settings. So, get this page up here finally. Sorry about that. Okay. So the next page I want to share with you is specific to elementary. And what this does is it shows our enrollment by site and grade level, and then it also reports our class size averages at that level. So you can see, why are you not sharing that? Hey, I'm sorry for all these troubles today. All right, that's fine. Okay, sorry about that. So these tables show the enrollment for each elementary school by grade level and provide the class size calculations. So you can see here that at Anderson, we have a total of 301 students who are in TK through 3rd grade, so they're part of the class size reduction program. The average across the entire program is 23.15 students per class. You can see that a couple of grade levels are quite high, with TK at 25, so that's 1 over the average, K at 25.67. So that's actually 5 students over what the 72 total students would get us at 24. But overall, you can see we're at 23.15. We are obligated to not exceed a 24-to-1 ratio at school sites on an average of the year. When you do that, you can lose your funding, not only for that school site, but for all of the other elementary schools. So you can also see in grades 4 and 5, there's 152 students, and our class average there is 30.40. So our contract says that we staff at 29 at this time of year. 31 is acceptable in terms of that average across the school site. Okay, so I'm going to jump to Tremont. You can see there's 229 students in the K-3 program. So right now at Tremont, we do have an average across the grades of 24.11. So that is just a little bit over the ratio that is allowed. We're confident that as the year goes on, we ordinarily experience quite a bit of attrition. So we will drop down below there. And you can see in 4th and 5th, we're at 29.33. And I'll just make a comment on the money side of staffing and enrollment. You want to be as close to your contractual ratios as possible. That means that you are spending on your instructional staff the amount that you should, given the number of students, right? You can be overstaffed, which can cause financial harm to a district. You can also be understaffed, which leads to very large class sizes. And then at Gretchen Higgins, and you note here with the ILCs, they're noted separately. And I didn't mention out in this far column, just those totals of independent study students that I mentioned before. And then at Gretchen Higgins, you can see 259 students in K through 3. That comes out to an average of 24.67. Again, we expect attrition, especially at Gretchen Higgins, where the migrant students from the migrant center outside of town are enrolled. And we know that a good number of those students leave at the end of October and don't come back until mid-April. So we're at 24.67, and then in the 4th and 5th enrollment, we're at 31.14. So again, a little bit over our ratio in K3 and in good shape at 4th and 5th. So I wanted to provide you with a summary look as well. So district-wide, again, which is not the measurement that we submit, is we're at 23.90. The reason I like to do the district-wide number is just to be able to take a look at how we did in terms of staffing to enrollment. So within a tenth of that 24-to-1 is a good number for us. And when you look at fourth and fifth, we have 393 students there, and that district-wide average again comes out at 30.23. So again, I'm pleased with those numbers and how they get us that close to our contractual ratios that we're required to do our best to meet. So, but any questions on this page before I give you a glimpse at the secondary?
Board questions?
I just noticed there's, looks like 3 combo classes. That's like a little more than usual, just kind of.
There are 3 combo classes, which is more than normal. Yep, we do not like to hold combos. 2 of them are at Tremont. Just the way those numbers fell, we had to, again, maximize the efficiency around that ratio by having the combination classes. Yeah.
You said a couple times the contractual limit. Is it 31? Is that what it is?
So we have a school-wide average of 29-to-1, and at this time of year, so that's what we staff at in the spring. This time of year, school-wide, we can go to 31. Okay. Other questions?
Other board questions?
Okay, let me get to another page.
Only for board to ask questions.
There will be a time for public comment at the end of the presentation, limited to the discussion.
These topics.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so I want to give you a sense of the secondary numbers, and this is Dixon High School and John Knight. So it's really hard to give you the kind of class size averages that you do in elementary. And so what I did here is I organized them by department. In a couple of areas, it's an individual course level because individual course or area of study that falls within a department. And I pull those out just because they're specialty and lower class sizes, and it can kind of skew the class size average for the other grade levels. So again, 29-to-1 school-wide is our target. In English, we're at 29.8. There are 3 periods of ELD at Dixon High School, 16.3, which is an appropriate level of enrollment in courses like that. Social science, 29.5, math, 29.6. We have 3 math support classes, which you can obviously see are smaller. Science at 29.3, physical education, 36.3. Our language program, which is Spanish, native Spanish at 29.5. The fine arts, and typically these courses run lower than average, are at 25.5. I would just note that there is a jazz band, which right now only has 6 students in it. There's choir, which only has 9 students in it. And I believe there is wind ensemble, which had about 17 students in it. So those are quite low enrollments, right, to be able to sustain over time. And I mentioned earlier, Dixon High School has 35 students in the independent study program. So at John Knight, language arts is running a little bit high right now at 31.5. Not as bad as math is at the moment. The ELD program actually has 117 students at John Knight, which is a huge program. And our hope is that we will see a lot of those students redesignated through their work this year. So 23.4. Social science is at 30.1. Math is at 34.4, which is very high, and kind of a glitch in the master scheduling process that we, including me, didn't foresee. There are 3 math support classes, which again run at 16.6 on average, so much smaller. You see science right on target, PE at 33.9, which is smaller than typical for PE classes, and art, which includes the drawing program as well as the band program, came in at 28.4. So again, when you look at these across the board, these numbers tell the story that we are, closely staffed to contract. And there are both in elementary and secondary, some places where classes are bigger than what we'd like. Kindergarten across the district is one of those. We'll talk a little bit later about a way we're trying to address that with your approval tonight. But overall, you can see we're in good shape. The Prairie right now has 81 students total. They opened right at 100. They have been able to graduate a number of students with the new graduation requirement provisions for this year. So they're at 81, so ample spots for students from Dixon High School or students moving in to be able to enroll in that program. So any questions on this page?
Other board questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question, and Avid is school-wide.
Yeah, Albert, so there are electives, and what I did put in here where any program where there were just 2 or 3 or 4 classes. So try to focus on where we have 10 classes or more, the support classes there. The Avid courses are appropriately enrolled at this point in time. They're all pretty full. A couple at the high school are probably larger than would be typical, but that's actually a good thing that we've got the kids enrolled. Yeah.
And the other question, the career tech education, that's the farm and.
That is, so that's our computer classes. That is our farm to fork class that you approved here recently. And that is all the agriculture mechanics classes. We do have floral design, which is actually in the art category.
Oh, okay.
And the ag science classes are actually in the science category because those courses actually meet those graduation requirements. So the way the report runs is they're included there.
Okay.
DJ, you had a question?
And Lloyd too.
Yeah, how many FTE staff for the 2 independent study programs here?
2. One working in elementary and one working in secondary.
Lloyd?
I don't like the 34.4 math deal at all. I think, of course, I'm not up to the research. When I worked in the Department of Education, the research was clear that kids struggle in math in middle grades. And large class sizes are not conducive in helping them learn. But then maybe I don't understand math support. Are the kids that are struggling in the regular classes bumped into math support? Or is it a double period? How can you explain that?
Yeah, sure. So that's the intent of it, Lloyd, is that students who prior to being to school starting have been identified as likely in need of a support class. So they're in the regular math class and then they have support on top of it, right?
Okay.
And the problem with that, so the idea of the help is a good thing. The problem is that then students don't have access to an elective. So one of the things long-term we'd like to do at John Knight is get it to be a 7-period day instead of 6, just much more equitable because our students in ELD and many of our students with disabilities and our students in support classes aren't able to access electives right now. So that's a real shortcoming of our current schedule. And it requires negotiation to move from a 6-period day to a 7-period day. But it is something we've already begun some conversation around. It's a big lift to make that kind of shift when you're not doing changes at the other sites. But it is our intent. We've talked about it quite a bit, and we really do view it as an equity issue.
Thank you.
You bet.
Other board questions? I had a question on, I know language arts at the high school has traditionally, there's been like a really big class and then much smaller classes as kids get older. Is that the case? Is that where we're seeing that average? I mean, I'm impressed that the average is lower because I remember hearing sometimes about 40 kids in class.
Yeah, and what I would say, the full report that I used to put this data together for you does show every class by period and course, right? And so you will always see, even with the best master schedules, you will always see anomalies where one class might have 36 and another class might have 24, right? And where you end up on the average, you end up at 30. That's just because of how complex that high school master schedule is. And you may have singleton classes or other design elements that just push kids to other places at certain periods. So yeah, if you went through ours line by line, I think you would see some classes that are larger. And sometimes that is actually by design. If you had, I think of one, we will oftentimes, let's say, the IM3 for calculus is a course that typically runs larger than just the regular IM3 class, with the thinking that those students who are on the more accelerated track, you can have more of them in a class than you would want in another class. So there are those kind of compromises that are made as you go through as well. We do have like say, we're really balanced here with the numbers at Dixon High. So that's, that's a good thing. We have a good schedule, but there's always going to be some larger classrooms, regardless of how good your numbers are overall. So I want to share, oh, I've been disabled screen sharing. You can get me back there, Mark. I don't know if I did that. I don't think I'm the host.
I apologize.
I forget.
Just do it because I was like, that's right.
Right. So all this good news on enrollment, the growth that we have is going to give us a better financial outlook, at least at this point in time. So I'm going to ask Bruce to talk to us a little bit about these charts that he put together, kind of outlining what we see happening with enrollment at this point in time and into the future, and how that's going to impact us on the financial side.
Okay,
You can go to the table. Yeah, Bruce, thank you.
I have a procedural question.
Sure.
When we shared with you on public comment, was that recorded?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay, because the way you told me, they didn't see it on Zoom, so.
it was recorded.
It wasn't long.
Okay, as long as it's recorded.
Go ahead, Bruce, thank you.
Madam President, fellow board members, it's nice. It's the first time in person actually meeting me
Yeah,
for that
nice to see
meeting. Being on Zoom, so nice to be here in person with you. So I'm going to go through a couple slides as we transition from school to school, see how this transitions into our funding. So this was the district snapshot last Friday. The total number was 3,009. Enrollment can change on a daily basis. We've been looking every day. It's currently this morning. This morning was 3,009, and then it dropped to 3,003 by this afternoon. So it'll go up and down in the next couple of weeks. The district enrollment has declined, had declined last year by 125 and has increased this year. This is a good change and a good sign for the district. Also to note, when we look at it, the growth primarily was in elementary and middle school. That's also a good sign, because growth in elementary and middle school means it's good for your future cohorts as they go through, especially if you look at that elementary. TK through 5 is larger than it was 2 years ago. So that's good. So that means that you'll have many more years, hopefully, of those students in the district. The district is going to continue to review the enrollment, and including getting a detailed demographic report after the fall, and that will help do the projections. Next slide, please. So our main source of funding is from the local control funding formula called LCFF. Sorry, LCFF. I always like to do that, get out of roll. So the main driver is enrollment. The current projection assumed a continuing enrollment decline, as Superintendent Dolan said. We were very conservative, very concerned, and want to make sure we put a worst case projection so we could manage through that. And you can see that decline was going through with a drop of 193 this year and 70 for each year going forward. Based on this year's trend and the growth in new housing construction that Superintendent Dolan mentioned, it's a fair assumption that the enrollment could be relatively flat going forward. And I think that hopefully that probably is going to be the news when we go through a demographic study. Next slide. So enrollment drives attendance, and the LCFF formula is based upon average daily attendance, commonly referred to as ADA. During the COVID pandemic, ADA was held harmless at the 2019-20 was held harmless to the prior year, all the way through 2020 and 21. While this was very good for our short-term funding, it's created a large catch-up drop that you see in the 2022-23 school year. That if we still had declining enrollment, there was a projected decline of 280 in attendance, much larger than the actual drop in enrollment for that catch-up. If the enrollment stays around the 3,009 level, that's that now, the catch-up drops down to 60 to 61 students. And again, with the strong fall enrollment and the growth in housing, this could remain stable at this level. Very good news. And additionally, also in the prior projections, there was also an error in the county office ADA of about 19 ADA that was included. That helped the ADA number as well. Next slide, please. This is the money slide. This is the most important slide when it comes to the budget. Student education is the most important. It's good for students. So based upon the revised enrollment attendance, this is a preliminary analysis of the local control funding. A small drop next year of a few $100,000 versus the 2.45 million that was in our previous projection. So let me say that again, a small drop of a few $100,000 versus a projected drop of almost $2.5 million. That is really, really good news. This is good news that can lead the district to being stabilized in the budget without having to do the reduction plan that we were looking at. We will continue to monitor and analyze the enrollment with updated projections of the first interim in December and the second interim in March, and then going into the adoption budget. That is the end of my presentation.
Board questions?
I guess my question is, we voted to increase our reserve, and how does this impact the reserve this year and next in terms of the projections?
Okay, so it will stop the degradation of reserve that you had going through doing the budget cuts. And then as we look at it, we'll have to look at the board policy and you can decide, what your reserve level. I believe it's kind of around 11% or so, going into the year and then dropping down to the, with the budget stabilization, it was dropping down to the 3. And so basically this would mean that if the enrollment stays stable, that you will not drop, you could not drop down to the 3. You can keep it at the level that it is today. Right? And so you could stabilize the reserve at whatever the reserve is at unaudited actuals, which will be coming up in a couple of weeks.
It certainly provides us with a much greater opportunity to have a higher level of reserve than we have. And reserve this year and into next year actually is inflated by COVID money, right? And so with that multi-year projection and that nice little percentage at the bottom of it, it's going to go down for everybody unless they get it rich somewhere else. But what these enrollment numbers that Bruce has highlighted show is ongoing money, right? So that's a big difference from why we have the balance that we do currently. So that if you're looking at ongoing dollars, it's much more feasible to have plans and take steps to keep that reserve at a healthy level ongoing.
Anyone else questions on this part of it? Right.
Okay. Thank you, sir. And I think I got one last document to show you, and not that one. And this is just an update on our case numbers, which we have been able to continue to see at low levels. We have probably have athletics as the place where our numbers have been most notable. The transmission through the contact and less masking and those types of things obviously has had an impact. So I'm sorry that I'm not finding that particular one. But we have a total at this point in time of 32 student cases across the district. The overwhelming majority of those are at Dixon High School and John Knight Middle School. Elementary setting have been very, very small numbers at this point in time, which is great. And we've had, I believe it's 10 staff cases that we have confirmed cases of at this point in time. The transmission, so there's a positive case, and then the contact tracing begins, which we're getting better and better at as we speak. Really, the contact tracing in the sports world has indicated transmission there, but we don't have, and Mark can speak to this in greater depth than I can, we don't have a confirmed in-school transmission at this point in time. Not to say that they haven't happened or could not happen. We all know that people even with strong precautions still do experience positive cases and such. I would note that today, California Department of Public Health put out some guidance, updated guidance for the school settings. And one of the notable changes in it was they established the standard for close contacts, so that within 6 feet, 15 minutes or more in a 24-hour period. They've extended that to the outdoor setting now. We're kind of surprised by that. But it was there, and what I would say is that our decision to have our students and staff wear masks outside, it's now easier to deal with that particular guidance that we started the year with, that practice that we followed last year. So, Mark, do you have anything that you would like to add into this piece of information here, sir?
Sure. Thank you, Superintendent Dolan. Good evening, board members. Couple quick numbers. This week, we have made phone calls to 104 students who are close contact. So by definition, a student who is within 6 feet of a positive case has to do one of two things. Either they can quarantine at home for 10 days, or they may do modified quarantine because we are wearing masks in school. And modified quarantine means that they will get 2 tests a week for those 10 days. Those 2 tests can either be done by the campus, or they can go to their primary care. They obviously can go to any place that does COVID testing, including UC Davis and the clinic that's over at the Nut Tree outlets for testing. If a student tests negative, they can stay at school. The whole hope is to eliminate any spread of COVID via school. So 12 elementary kids have been contacted by us this week, 49 John Knight Middle School, and 43 at the high school, generated by those 7 weekly COVID cases. As things change, we will adapt to what we need to do, and they do change all the time. Today, I was with Lisa, our RN, and doing COVID cases at the high school, which we run on Mondays and Thursdays. And we probably tested about 30 kids today who were in close contact. So Monday is a holiday. We won't do any testing, but we'll test again on September 9th. So that's the information on close contacts. I will remind everybody, we are still using MERV 13 filters, running our air changes at 15 to 20%. We have our classroom air purifiers that I will remind everybody, those filters last 3,000 hours. So if you run it during the school day, it'll give us over 2 years. The indicator light on the front of those air purifiers show you the air quality. So when it's a really smoky day, that will change from blue to red. It has nothing to do with the filter because those filters will last us another year. We are limiting visitors to the campus. We are limiting field trips and assemblies. So we're doing all those things. We have hand sanitizer and soap. So I am pleased to say that, 3 weeks in, we have 32 students who have tested positive. And each week it has been getting shorter, but that still means we must keep up our due diligence so that we can get through this, as cases in the county have been coming down the last couple of reports. We hit a high of just over 20% and we're now at 13.5. So obviously part of those, you'll ask me, how come we had 7 people and only 104? Some of those kids are vaccinated, in which case they don't need to do the modified quarantine. So if you have any questions, I will take them. Otherwise, I'll just keep listening.
Lloyd, go ahead.
My question is about the 42 kids who are at home. And then if you have 109 kids exposed, are they're also at home as well until they prove that they're negative?
So 32 kids are not at home because 14 in week 1 are now back at school. So as your 10 days expire, you can come back to school. The modified quarantine students stay at school unless they test positive. And most of our parents are selecting the modified quarantine as opposed to the 10-day at-home quarantine. Does that make sense?
Yes. My question though is, those kids that are at home, what kind of instruction are they getting? I mean, a week ago we had an issue. Is that issue been resolved? Or are we still struggling to get online learning to those kids? Because hopefully they're not going to be left, behind. So I just am curious where we are.
Sure. So I think we've made improvements in this area. The vehicle to be able to communicate to students and families, the best vehicle is the Google Classroom. And so we were insistent that all of our staff have the Google Classroom up and running, which our principals have been monitoring and making sure that people who were slow to do that did get it in place. And the lower grades, they were not using the Google Classroom really last year. They used ClassDojo and other vehicles to keep parents informed on what the work is. The reality is when a student is home right now, and just the same as it was prior to COVID, they're getting their work provided to them without any direct inspection, right? So that's the unfortunate part of this. We don't have Room and Zoom happening this year because, in essence, the distance learning requirement expired with SB 98 in the summertime. So I do think that we're at this point in time doing a better job of making sure that students and families know where to go to get the work. I've heard far fewer concerns about this at this point in time. I hope that means that families are finding it to be more effective than it was. We had bugs to work out, certainly, and the newness of it was a factor, but we did push very hard to get the Google Classrooms back up, and it seems to be of help at this point.
So I have more of a comment than a question, but so I'm just gonna, I think it's really great that the district is testing. The process of the district testing can take 48 to 72 hours. So if parents are worried about their kids being on the modified quarantine, Vacaville, you can get your results in 15 minutes at the outlets.
Right.
And they open at 7, so you can even take your kid before school.
Well, okay. Yeah, and we would like to be doing the 15-minute testing. That's the antigen testing, I believe. But we can't get those test kits at this point in time. They're very, very short supply. And in particular, I think the supply is questionable because guidance was changed in the past. If you had a positive on that antigen testing, then you had to do the, what is it, PCR, which one? PCR. I would get the letters eventually if I kept going. But that requirement is not in place anymore. So the test, the 15-minute test, Melissa, you're referring to, is now all that's needed instead of that second one, which 24 to 48 hours. So thanks for that reminder.
Other board comments on this portion? Okay.
That's all we got for you.
All
It's
right.
a lot, I think, we got for you, but a lot of positive news.
Great, thank you for that. So any other board comments before I open for public comment on this item? Public comment?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes, so I don't know exactly how this works. We can just make comment, you guys don't respond back, right?
Right.
Okay. I'm so I don't ask you a question
Yeah,
and not get a response
And
back.
if you want to ask a question, we can get back to you. These are agendized items, so we can have a fuller discussion on them. It's the items that are not agendized that we can't. So we could certainly respond to, staff respond to a question if there was something related.
On the agenda.
On the agenda,
That we
yes.
just talked about. Okay, thank you for clarifying. So I get that you guys have a job to do and your focus is to test and trace and test and trace and quarantine and do the hamster wheel. It just doesn't seem like it's, I mean, is the goal here to have no cases at the campus? Because if that's the goal, that is not is that your guys' goal, is to have 0 cases on campus?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So that would be great if that were the
Would be
case.
great.
It's also not realistic.
It's definitely not.
Right.
Okay.
So that, and anybody who says otherwise, I don't think is just being, really taking things into consideration. That
Yeah.
virus sneaks around and people pick it up even while they've been taking precaution, and people who are vaccinated are being found positive. From the get-go, what our responsibility has been is to mitigate the spread of the virus to the greatest degree possible, right? And so everything that's been done from the time we closed school, actually, to transitioning back into hybrid and opening full this year, with whatever precautions we've taken, cleaning, masks, air filters, et cetera, et cetera. All of those are just mitigation efforts. So trying to limit the number of cases that we have. We have taken on the role, school districts in the state and across the country have really had to take on the role of public health agencies. And it's killing us, quite honestly. The amount of time that we are spending on these issues rather than on kids learning and quality teaching and all the other things that are our normal, regular, critical business. We're totally taken away from the time and energy to do that while we're dealing with having to test and having to trace and all those things. So the fewer cases, the better, obviously, but I wouldn't say, oh, if we're going to ensure in Dixon Unified, there will be no cases.
Exactly.
Yeah, not practical.
Is there other public comments on this?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I want to comment and speak for everyone understanding. I want to comment on this, you're not supposed to take the role of public health administrator or doctor. No one in the school is. Nurses there to say, hey, send you home, parent can take you to a doctor. Where were you? Where were you when I had Rice syndrome when I was 7 years old? Why didn't you have these schools protected for me so I almost died from Rice syndrome? Where were you when I had strep throat 20-something times in my teenage years? Where were you when I had tonsillitis about 30 times in 1 year when I was 9? Where were you when I was 14 when I had the Russian flu? Was unconscious for 3 days. Where were you? Did I get that in school? I don't know. I was going to school all the time. Where were you? See, where were you? You're supposed to be helping me get an education. Not play doctor, not listen to doctors that are following an agenda that has no truth. The tests that you're giving kids have been proven that they cannot differentiate between strep, tonsillitis, meningitis, flu B, corona, and several other ailments. I wonder if they can differentiate between 2 ones. I don't know. The truth is, and that is the truth, you can look it up, and I hope you do. They don't differentiate between diseases. We don't know if these kids actually have corona or not. All we do know is the truth that's out there, the facts that are out there, the kids aren't dying.
Thank you. Okay, any other public comments on this item? Oh,
Go ahead.
Independent children. I'm sorry, you haven't been recognized for public comment. I may go ahead.
Yes, I do have just a quick question, right? I'm wondering what is being done about like the sub shortages that we're having, right? And it's like across the district, like not just teachers, but also, right, like food service, right, nurses, custodians, right? I'm just wondering what we're doing about that. Because I know, at least for me, right, and it's just speaking from my own perspective, the nurse at my school site, is unfortunately not there. And so, and we even had, our principal have to be subbing in classes because we don't have subs. And so I am just wondering, what the plan is or what's being done or what's being put in the works. I'm also wondering, if I'm not mistaken, you can totally correct me if I'm wrong. I thought in the board meeting in May, it was said or stated or asked that the company that was helping hire for the CBO would be looking into like the pay scales, right? As to our district compared to everywhere around us. And so I'm wondering, if there's an update on that, because, and this is only from, what I hear and just what I've seen, that I think that does maybe have something to do with it, right? Being able to grab people to want to be coming here, particularly to Dixon versus, right, the surrounding areas. And so I'm just wondering about that.
Okay, so you're absolutely right. The substitute issue is a really tough one. All of us, all school districts are really battling with that one. And I'll take it a step further. And one of the reasons that the substitute issue is so difficult is because we're having a hard time filling regular positions, ongoing positions, right? So we still have a number of teaching positions and a range of classified positions as well that are vacant. So our HR folks, led by Tanya, we've constantly got postings out. We're talking to some people about one thing they might be interested in, and then it's, by the way, we have a need for ding, 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 right? One example, there was a very atypical 6 or 7 applicants for one TPM job. And so HR spoke to all those folks and said, come on in and fill out the paperwork for a substitute position, or we've got other jobs. Excuse me, things like that. So totally impactful challenge for us right now. And yes, I was at 2 sites today talking with principals and getting into classrooms a little bit. And they are talking about the fact that they cannot do their regular job because they're helping to cover classes, right? So it's an obstacle. It's an obstacle for sure in Dixon. And again, talking with my colleagues, we're all dealing with these vacancies and the shortage of substitutes, quite specifically. Other question. So we do have School Services of California that we contracted with to conduct that comparison study on salaries for the administrative staff. So that does have that chief business official hiring process on hold until we get that back. And we've also initiated conversation about trying to do some, and these would be done internally, comp studies for our certificated classified employees as well. So an issue that we have to address with all units.
We did try to, help the sub shortage, right? We increased the pay. Covering all the upfront costs, including fingerprints and stuff like that, to try to make it easier for people to start.
Good reminder. Yeah, thanks, DJ. Yeah.
Under desperation, please do not hire anybody from the homeless right now.
Please don't speak out of turn. I'll recognize you if you wish to be recognized at a later date. Okay, we have concluded public comment on this item. We're going to move on. This information item, there's no action required. Moving on to Tanya. To B1, declaration of need for fully qualified educators, timely, because we were just talking about that.
Good evening, Board President O'Halloran, members of the board, and Superintendent Dolan. What you have before you is a revised declaration of need based on our necessity of hiring this year. We are asking for approval for 4 additional CLAD English learner authorizations and 2 additional interns. The declaration has been uploaded to Granicus for review, and the staff is recommending approval.
All right, are there board questions on this item, comments? All right, is there public comment on this item? All right, seeing none, I will entertain a motion for approval of this item. There's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes. All right, we are on B2, approval of PBIS TOSA job description.
So PBIS stands for Positive Behavioral Intervention and Support. Funded by the Expanded Opportunity Learning Grant, this PBIS teacher on special assignment would be assisting with establishing critical framework that supports the schools in creating a climate where all students can achieve and learn. This also has been uploaded to Granicus for review, and staff recommends approval.
Great. Are there board questions or comments on this item? All right, seeing none, are there public comments on this item? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion for approval of this item.
So moved.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. All right, we are on B3, approval, excuse me, of Migrant Parent Advisory Council Coordinator.
So the district has a direct service agreement with Migrant Education Region 2 that requires a migrant parent advisory council. And that council meets 6 to 10 times a year. This coordinator position would organize all those meetings for the year. And the job description has been uploaded to Granicus and staff recommends approval.
Great. Are there board questions or comments on item 3? All right, seeing none, are there public questions or comments on item 3? Emily, go ahead.
I guess it's more like a comment, and I realize that maybe, I don't know, maybe this wasn't the perfect time to bring it up, so I apologize, I probably should have at the beginning. But I am wondering, particularly since we're talking about, right, something that has to do with our migrant families, is to, what is, again, in the works or plan for translated board meetings? Either being available live or even after the fact, right? I know that it's recorded now, and so people are able to do it after. And so I am wondering, what is in the works with that? I know that we do receive funding, specifically correlated to our English, our EL families. And so I do think it is pretty equitable to make sure that we have, that everyone has access to the information being, presented at the board meetings. And if that needs to be emailed to me, totally okay with that.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything in the works right now for translated board meetings.
Not real actively. I mean, we see it as a legitimate issue, and we're having some conversations around it. I met with DJ this morning actually, and he asked about work we're doing on it. There are a variety of tools that you can use to try to provide some translation services. We're kind of in this limbo right now of, are we here? Are we council chambers? That's kind of had some impact on it. But I think as we get settled, we'll take a more active look into what kind of options we might have.
Great, thank you. All right, so I will entertain a motion on B3. I'll move. There's a motion. Is there a second?
I second.
The motion is second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, and motion passes. All right, we are on B4, approval of 7 short-term employee classified paraprofessional positions per Ed Code 45103.2.
So with the current guidelines that are in place, we're unable to allow parents and community volunteers into the classrooms. So funded by the Expanded Opportunity Learning Grant, these 7 short-term employees would perform the duties of a paraprofessional in our primary classes from September 2021 to June 3rd of 2022. These position timing dates cannot be extended without the board's approval. This has also been uploaded to Granicus and staff recommends approval.
Great, are there board questions or comments on this item?
Just, we talked, this is primarily supposed to be for kindergarten, right? Not lower grade?
Yeah, so we have large numbers in K right now, and in part, this is intended to support the teachers and students at those grade levels. They are typically having parents or grandparents, guardians in the room helping run some of the small groups and doing prep work and everything. So that's not possible right now. So what we really envision is each site being able to determine how they want to use this help, because we know our first graders really have some holes as well. I've been telling a bunch of people, it was last week, I was at a couple sites and saw first graders and was really struck by their inability to cut effectively. They just use the scissors and cut out some things that are just one of those staple skills in the kindergarten level. So, and goodness knows, there's things that are not as visible, letters and sounds and numbers and reading and all those types of things. This one was just so glaring, just passing through rooms that it's like, wow. So it could be that first grade also get some of this time. We're going to allow the flexibility at the sites. We are concerned about our ability to recruit for these positions.
That was my idea.
All right. So one of the strategies is really for the site administrators to push these jobs really hard through their families, right? If you have a parent, guardian, whoever who is dropping a student off for the start of the school day, might they have 4 hours that they would be willing to work in a classroom or classrooms, and still be free in time to pick up the child from school. You know, it's a limit, it's a shorter day. So perhaps we'll have some success in filling through our school communities. That's really our best option, I think.
Thank you. Any, Jewel?
Yeah, I have a question. Would it be required to be Spanish speaking for the position?
No, no.
All right, other board questions, comments? All right, open for public comment on this item. Go ahead, Nikki.
So just for clarification, you guys are referring to migrant students and focusing, okay, you're referring to kindergartners.
All kindergarten.
This is
This is item 4.
Item 4.
Okay, so I was wondering why the Spanish speaking thing was asked. So you're short, you just need aides in the classroom, and you're saying parent involvement in the kindergarten level, but parents are not allowed on campus at this time. So I'm wondering how you expect that to take place.
So the challenge, one of the challenges we're facing is because parents aren't allowed on campus, the teachers are having a harder time doing what is ordinarily done, right? So we're creating these positions to help fill for that lack of parent volunteers, right? And the fact that there are employees and go through all the screening and are obligated to follow our protocols, et cetera, is what makes us comfortable about having them come in. They're an employee like anyone.
So you're hiring
Yes.
them as an employee instead of saying, calling them parent involvement.
Yes.
And the reference to parents was in part that we hope to be able to employ some of our family members, right? Dropping the child off for school and stick and work for 4
What would
hours.
those requirements be of this person to be an employee? Would they need to be vaccinated? And so
Yeah,
forth?
so we are dealing with law now, executive order, I think, actually, that requires employees to either be vaccinated or test twice weekly. That program is just starting to get up and running at this point in time. That's not a local decision. So either proof of vaccination or test twice weekly. And then all of our typical screening, fingerprints and everything else, TB, all those things. And as a paraprofessional, you also have to qualify either based on college units or passing our paraprofessional examination. So, yeah.
And just point of clarification, so traditionally, because I know you're new to our board meetings, and I hope you come to lots more, but we don't usually do a back and forth. So just to sort of, if you ask your question, answer it, and then we'll move on if there's somebody else. So that's just the way we usually do things. So,
Okay.
But we're almost at the end of our agenda, so it seemed like that was feasible to do that. So, all right, so, what's that?
Need a vote, right?
So, so entertain a motion, got a motion, can I have a second, please?
Second.
There's motion and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, that motion passes. And we are at agenda items for, thank you, Tanya. We're at agenda items for future board meetings. Does anybody have an agenda item for a future board meeting they'd like to add? All right, board announcements. Does anybody have any other announcements in addition to the fact that the farm grand opening was fantastic? Any other announcements, comments from the board, Lloyd?
I just like to thank everybody that, I thought the farm celebration was well done,
I did too.
Yeah, I did.
really well done.
Yeah.
And so congratulations to everybody that's involved. I was impressed, and so thank you for inviting me.
No.
Great, yes, thank you for doing that all. All right, let's see, coming events, September 6th is Labor Day. September 16th is our next board meeting, and I will entertain a motion for adjournment. I'll move. There's a motion, is there a second?
I second.
There's a motion, a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The meeting is adjourned.